There is something you carry that people can feel the moment you enter a room, a rare stillness that changes the air without a sound. It isn't charisma or charm. It's energy, the kind that whispers before you speak, the kind that rearranges nervous systems. People don't know how to name it, but they feel it. You've probably noticed it too. How conversations soften when you walk in. How strangers open their hearts without understanding why. How the atmosphere bends toward calm and then leaves you quietly drained. That is the frequency of the wounded healer, an energy signature forged in pain but transmuted into something sacred. It has the power to soothe chaos, to bring warmth to broken spaces, but it also carries danger because the same field that heals others also attracts everything unresolved around it, both light and shadow. People are drawn to you not because they see you, but because they feel the radiance of your field. Some come to rest in it. Others come to feed on it. Jung saw this paradox clearly. He realized that the empath's glow becomes dangerous when it shines unconsciously, when light forgets to protect itself. Without awareness, the empath's aura becomes a beacon for energy predators, and over time, it begins to consume its owner from within. Modern psychology might call it hyperempathy or nervous sensitivity, but Jung went deeper. He saw it as psychic alchemy, a survival mechanism that evolved into a spiritual force. Your nervous system didn't become this sensitive by chance. It adapted under emotional pressure. Each heartbreak fine-tuned it to invisible frequencies. Each loss taught it to read the unspoken. That's why your presence feels like medicine, and why it also leaves you exhausted. This glow was never a gift you were born with. It's the scar tissue of your soul learning how to emit light instead of pain. It's the holy residue of what you've survived. Stay, because what we're about to uncover is the difference between a wounded healer and a sovereign one. You've probably been told your sensitivity is a blessing, that your empathy makes you special, closer to the divine. But no one warned you about what happens when light doesn't know its limits. No one told you that being able to feel everything means you'll carry what isn't yours. You start mistaking the collective pain for your purpose, confusing compassion with absorption. And slowly, what once felt like a calling begins to feel like a burden. You wake up heavy without knowing why. You cry for strangers, for the news, for wars that happened decades before you were born. You sense the tremor in a conversation that hasn't even begun. That's the shadow side of light, when awareness turns into exhaustion. The empath's glow is magnetic, but magnetism doesn't discriminate. It draws the lost, the broken, the takers, and the seekers. They come close because your energy feels like home. You absorb their chaos, soothe their storms, and mistake that release for connection. For a while, it feels meaningful, until you realize you've dimmed yourself to keep others bright. Jung wrote that the most dangerous thing is to identify with the light. He meant that when you believe your purpose is to save, you begin to live outside your own center. You abandon yourself for the comfort of others and call it love. But love without boundaries is slow self-erasure. If this meant something to you, subscribe and stay. Your presence truly matters here. Jung called this unconscious identification inflation of the light. The moment the healer forgets that they too are human, that light without containment burns itself out. You've probably felt that burn in your bones, the fatigue that sleep doesn't touch. The loneliness of being surrounded by people who only know your giving side. The silence after they've healed and left, leaving you wondering if you were ever seen. It's not cruelty, it's imbalance. Your nervous system was trained to regulate others before it learned to regulate itself. That's why you can sense a lie in a voice, tension in a smile, danger in calm. You call it intuition, but it's really vigilance dressed as empathy. You didn't attract the broken because you're naive. You attracted them because your body promised safety. But the price of that promise is depletion. This is the paradox of the empath's glow. What heals others can hollow you if you don't bring it into consciousness. The more unaware the light, the more shadow it creates. Yet, in that shadow lies your transformation, the shift from wounded healer to sovereign one. Because once you see the pattern, you no longer play it. You stop confusing absorption with love. You stop mistaking pain for depth. You start to see that compassion isn't about carrying, it's about clarity. That's when the glow begins to change texture. It stops radiating outward uncontrollably and starts shining inward as awareness. And that, Jung would say, is where the soul begins to return home. Carl Jung once wrote that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. What he meant is that real light isn't born from purity. It's born from confrontation. The empath's glow, that rare spiritual radiance people can sense but never explain, is not the result of goodness. It's the byproduct of someone who has faced their own shadow and lived to tell about it. The nervous system of an empath is like a map of every emotional earthquake they've survived. Each tremor left cracks, and through those cracks, light now escapes. What people call sensitivity is actually awareness sharpened by suffering. You don't just sense pain, you recognize it instantly, because it used to live inside you. You became fluent in the unspoken language of wounds. You can read tension in silence, deception in tone, heartbreak in posture. You've lived those frequencies before. That is why people feel safer around you, not because you fix them, but because your presence tells their nervous systems, I've been where you are, and we both survived. Jung called this the transcendent function, the inner bridge that connects what is broken with what can be healed. When the conscious mind meets the unconscious truth, a third energy emerges, awareness that can hold both pain and wisdom at once. That's the real glow people see. It's not emotional intensity, it's integration. You don't radiate because you're untouched by darkness. You radiate because you've made peace with it. But this is where many empaths get lost. They confuse familiarity with duty. They think being able to feel someone's suffering means they must fix it. That's how the healer becomes the hostage, bound not by compassion, but by guilt. The truth is, empathy without boundaries becomes possession. The moment you carry what isn't yours, your own light begins to dim. The shadow isn't your enemy, it's your teacher. Every time you turn toward it, your consciousness expands. Every time you deny it, it grows stronger in silence. Jung believed that the soul's highest task was individuation, becoming whole by integrating the parts we were taught to reject. For empaths, this means reclaiming power, anger, desire, the traits they buried to stay safe. Because without those, empathy becomes imbalanced. All openness, no structure. You cannot hold others if you have nowhere to stand. To glow sustainably, your energy needs a frame. So, when you sense everything, don't rush to label it divine. Ask what part of you it's reflecting. The world mirrors your inner weather. If you still attract chaos, it's because a piece of you is still trying to resolve its own storm. Healing isn't about cleaning out darkness. It's about learning to sit beside it without losing yourself. The empath's glow is evidence of this mastery. It's not light that blinds. It's clarity that steadies. When people feel your presence, what they're really sensing is balance. The rare vibration of someone who no longer fears their own shadow. That's what Jung meant when he said wholeness is better than goodness. Because light without shadow is fantasy, but light that includes shadow is freedom. Pause here. Feel how that truth settles in your body, quietly, deeply, without resistance. You were never meant to be pure light. You were meant to be whole. At the deepest level, this glow didn't begin as a gift. It began as defense. When you were a child, your nervous system learned to read danger before words could describe it. You memorized the smallest cues, a shift in tone, a tightening jaw, a silence that stretched too long. You learned that safety depended on sensing the emotional weather of others. It wasn't empathy back then. It was survival. Jung called this the adaptation of the psyche, when the child develops an antenna for the moods of the room to predict what might hurt next. What began as hypervigilance eventually evolved into intuition, and intuition evolved into energy sensitivity. You became the emotional barometer of your environment, and that barometer became your identity. You were praised for being kind, calm, understanding, but no one saw that these were your survival strategies. You weren't naturally peaceful. You were trained to be peace itself. As you grew older, that same sensitivity followed you into every relationship. You could sense the storm before it came. You knew how to comfort before anyone asked. You became the listener, the healer, the one who absorbs without complaint. But beneath the calm, your body was in constant alert. You called it empathy, but it was vigilance disguised as virtue. The world kept rewarding it, and so you kept giving, until you realized you were empty. That's when the nervous system begins to rebel. It starts sending signals, anxiety, exhaustion, emotional flooding. Your body isn't betraying you. It's asking for boundaries. Jung believed that the unconscious always seeks balance. When one part of the psyche becomes overdeveloped, like compassion without limits, another part will surface to correct it. That correction often feels like a crisis. The empath who has spent years holding others begins to feel resentment, irritation, or even rage. It's shocking at first. You think you're losing your goodness. In truth, you're meeting your shadow, the part of you that's been forced to stay silent. The anger you feel isn't hatred, it's information. It's your soul's way of saying, "You've overextended, it's time to come home." This is the point most empaths mistake for a breakdown. But it's actually the breakthrough. It's the psyche trying to equalize energy. The glow can't stabilize if it's powered by depletion. The healer must reclaim their own life force before they can guide anyone else. That's why Jung emphasized consciousness. Light without awareness consumes itself, but light with awareness becomes wisdom. You might recognize this shift in small moments, when you no longer rush to comfort someone who refuses to take responsibility, when you say no without guilt, when you stop explaining your empathy to people who weaponize it. That's your unconscious rebalancing. You're no longer the child trying to prevent the storm. You're the adult choosing which weather you'll stand in. The glow that once leaked from your wounds is now being reclaimed as strength. Think of it like this. The empath's nervous system is an orchestra that has played one song for too long, the song of others' emotions. At some point, the instruments begin to tremble, not from beauty, but from fatigue. To heal is to change the rhythm. It's to teach the orchestra a new melody, one where your heartbeat leads, not theirs. Jung wrote that the process of individuation often feels like fire. It burns away illusions but forges identity. That fire is within you now. It's the tension between your old reflex to absorb and your new instinct to observe. Between your desire to heal and your need to rest. Between compassion and clarity. The more you allow this tension, the stronger your light becomes, not as a flare for others, but as a steady flame for yourself. And here's the paradox, Jung would whisper. The light you spent years giving away is the same light you now must guard. Because awareness isn't found in avoiding the dark. It's found in holding your flame steady while you look into it. Stay with this thought. You were never just sensitive. You were being trained, in silence, to become conscious. What once felt like a burden was the psyche teaching you how to see. The wound was the lesson. The glow is its proof. Imagine the empath's soul as a lantern, forged from iron and glass, bound by fire. It wasn't crafted in peace, but in pressure. Each piece of glass represents a fragment of your past. Each crack a moment that nearly broke you. The flame inside is your awareness, the part that survived every storm. When you walk into the world, people don't see the glass or the scars that hold it together. They see the light. They feel the warmth. But they don't realize that this glow was once smoke, that this calm was once chaos, learning to breathe. You can almost hear it when life gets quiet, the faint hum of your own frequency, the rhythm of energy moving through you. That's your lantern at work. Every empath has one. Some burn bright but are unstable, flickering wildly when someone else's emotions enter the room. Others burn low and steady, their light thick with wisdom. The difference isn't power, it's awareness. The unstable flame reacts. The steady flame perceives. Jung would say the difference lies in consciousness, whether the light is serving the self or consuming it. There are days your lantern feels heavy, as if the metal itself has rusted from carrying too much sorrow. You walk through crowds and feel the ache of 1,000 stories brushing against your field. Strangers glance at you for a second too long, drawn without knowing why. They feel the heat, but not the history. They sense comfort, but not the cost. You try to protect your energy by dimming the light, pretending to be ordinary, but your nature betrays you. The glow leaks through anyway, through your tone, through your silence, through the way you notice what others miss. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the lantern breathing. The flame crackles when truth passes through your body. It hums when you forgive. It steadies when you rest. That is the sound of integration, of the nervous system remembering it no longer has to scan for danger. Healing, in Jung's language, is the moment awareness stops reacting and starts observing. The empath's lantern glows not because it is untouched by darkness, but because it has learned how to turn darkness into fuel. But here's what few ever tell you. This same light that warms others also calls the shadows. People who live disconnected from their own energy will gravitate to yours. They'll mistake your steadiness for salvation. They'll step too close to the flame and, without meaning to, draw from it. That's why boundaries aren't walls. They're glass, transparent, firm, allowing light to pass but not to leak. You were never meant to hide your glow. You were meant to contain it. The lantern teaches you that illumination is not about exposure. It's about precision. It's knowing when to shine outward and when to turn inward. The empath's task is not to dim the light for fear of attracting the wrong ones. It's to refine it so that only resonance, not desperation, can find you. When Jung spoke of the wounded healer, he wasn't describing a saint. He was describing a human who learned that their wound was the doorway to wisdom. Your pain was not punishment. It was initiation. Every fracture lets more consciousness in. The lantern you carry is proof. Proof that even shattered glass can hold light if the flame inside knows who it belongs to. Hold that image. Feel the warmth of your own glow against your ribs. The world doesn't need you to shine harder. It needs you to shine wisely. You don't always notice it, but you mirror the world. Every gesture, every tone around you finds a reflection somewhere inside. When someone trembles, your body tightens. When someone hides pain behind a laugh, you feel the ache in your chest. It happens faster than thought, an ancient reflex your nervous system never unlearned. This is the hidden cost of your glow. You become a mirror so polished that you forget there's a person behind it. And when the day ends, you can't tell what feelings are yours anymore. You walk into a room and instantly feel what's wrong. Someone's anxiety hums in your stomach. Another person's anger flashes behind your eyes. You think you're intuitive, but really, your nervous system has become an instrument tuned to everyone else's key. That's why you feel drained even after simple conversations. You're not just listening, you're absorbing. You can sense when someone's lying, when tension thickens the air, when unspoken words cling to walls. But this sensitivity comes with a side effect: fatigue. Because every signal you pick up enters your body like static, and static has to go somewhere. Most empaths respond by shrinking. You start apologizing for needing rest. You smile when you don't mean it. You say, "It's okay," even when it isn't, because peace feels safer than truth. But this constant adjustment wears you down. Jung would say that when the self is over-identified with the persona, the mask of kindness, the identity of the good one, the soul begins to starve. You start to feel invisible in your own life, as if your only purpose is to keep others comfortable. There's a moment every empath remembers, that quiet night when you realize you're exhausted, not from giving too much, but from giving without being seen. It's a heartbreak that doesn't break loudly. You just stop chasing understanding. You stop explaining your empathy to those who use it as currency. And in that silence, something miraculous happens. The mirror begins to crack, and behind it, you glimpse yourself again. At first, it feels strange, almost selfish, to focus inward. But slowly, you realize this isn't abandonment. It's return. The more you recognize your own reflection, the clearer your glow becomes. You stop absorbing everything because you finally understand that what's yours vibrates differently. You can feel the separation, where their chaos ends and your calm begins. That's discernment. That's the evolution of empathy. Jung wrote that the goal of the soul is to become conscious of itself. For the empath, that means no longer mistaking reflection for identity. You can still understand others deeply, but now you choose what to let in. Your energy becomes like a mirror with a heartbeat, responsive but not porous. You reflect what's true, not what's heavy. Breathe here. You're not losing your empathy, you're refining it. The mirror isn't breaking, it's revealing who's been standing behind it all along. For most of your life, you believed your light existed to keep others warm. You thought love meant understanding everyone, even when it hurt you. You confused peace with silence and compassion with self-sacrifice. But Jung would tell you that real healing begins when the light stops trying to fix what it didn't break. The empath's greatest transformation comes when they stop asking, "How can I make them feel better?" and start asking, "Why do I believe I must?" This is the turning point. When awareness replaces instinct, when giving becomes choice instead of compulsion. You start to see how your old language shaped your identity. You used to say, "I'm too sensitive." Now you whisper, "I'm finely attuned." You used to apologize for your tears. Now you understand they were signals, not weaknesses. You used to call it overthinking. Now you call it deep perception. This is how the psyche reclaims its power, by changing the words it uses to describe itself. Jung called this linguistic alchemy, the moment the unconscious stops being something that happens to you and starts being something you can translate. The wounded healer becomes the conscious creator, but this clarity isn't soft. It demands discipline. It asks you to see how often you've mistaken guilt for empathy and obligation for love. It shows you the hidden pride behind endless giving, the part that needs to be needed. That's where the shadow hides, not in cruelty, but in overkindness. The part of you that says yes to everyone is the same part that fears disappearing if you ever say no. The light isn't pure. It's paradoxical, and only when you face that paradox can you truly own it. You may notice something new happening inside you, a stillness. The need to explain yourself fades. The urge to fix others dissolves. You begin to speak less and see more. People start calling you different, colder, changed. They mistake your clarity for arrogance because they no longer benefit from your confusion. But that's how the shift always looks from the outside. Peace mistaken for distance, wisdom mistaken for pride. Let them. The empath who integrates their shadow no longer negotiates for belonging. They understand that understanding everyone isn't love. It's surveillance. Love is truth spoken gently, even when it disrupts comfort. Pause here. Feel how that truth lands. Your light doesn't have to reach everyone. It only has to stay true to its source. In Jung's terms, this is the moment of individuation, when the healer becomes sovereign. Sovereignty doesn't mean isolation. It means alignment. It's when your inner and outer worlds match. You no longer chase validation because your energy already vibrates in integrity. You don't attract broken people anymore because your frequency no longer promises rescue. You attract resonance. Those who come near now bring balance, not chaos. That's how you know the transformation is complete. Not when life gets easier, but when peace no longer feels foreign. It's tempting to call this enlightenment. But Jung would disagree. He'd call it integration. Enlightenment separates light from dark. Integration lets them dance. You no longer have to banish your shadow. You only have to stay conscious enough to guide it. The empath who learns this becomes luminous without leaking. They no longer glow to prove their goodness. They glow because their wholeness hums quietly beneath the skin. And here lies the warning Jung left for those who walk this path. Beware of unearned wisdom. Don't confuse awareness with arrival. Every time you forget to tend your flame, the old patterns will return disguised as love. You'll know it by the exhaustion that follows. When that happens, remember, sovereignty isn't about never falling back. It's about noticing faster when you do. So, protect your own frequency. Guard it not with fear, but with understanding. Your glow no longer needs to convince anyone. It simply needs to stay awake. You are not here to prove your light. You are here to embody it. Let that breathe. Transformation always sounds grand until you realize it's made of small, quiet acts repeated every day. For the empath, practice means learning how to stay luminous without leaking. It starts with something simple. Pause before reacting. When energy floods your body, a sudden sadness, someone else's fear, the tension of a room, don't rush to interpret it. Just notice where it lands. Feel it move through your chest, your throat, your hands. Awareness itself is containment. The moment you observe it, you stop being ruled by it. The second practice is grounding. Empathy isn't meant to float. It's meant to flow. Touch the world again. Cold water on your wrists, bare feet on the earth, deep breaths that remind your body it has a home. The nervous system resets through texture and rhythm. Light needs weight to last. Then, choose your exchanges consciously. Before giving, ask yourself, Do I have energy, or am I borrowing it? Before listening, ask, am I here out of love or habit? These micro-questions rebuild the architecture of sovereignty. They remind you that compassion isn't an emergency response. It's an act of precision. Finally, let rest become sacred. Turn off the noise. Sit near something still, a candle, a tree, the sound of your own breath. These are not trivial moments. They're repairs. Jung wrote that the soul speaks in images, not words. When you rest, those images rise. A memory, a color, a symbol. Each one is the psyche returning home. Your practice isn't to shine brighter, it's to shine truer. Because every time you choose awareness over impulse, you strengthen the flame's intelligence. Light consciously. Every transformation carries a cost. When you begin to live from awareness, you lose the world that once defined you. You'll outgrow the roles that once kept you safe. The listener, the fixer, the peacemaker. You'll find yourself standing at the edge of old connections that no longer resonate. It feels lonely at first, like silence after music. But the silence isn't emptiness. It's space. The energy that once leaked outward is finally circling back to its source. This is what Jung called the return of the libido, life force reclaimed from projection. What you once gave away to be loved, you now give back to yourself to be whole. At first, this peace will confuse people. They'll call you distant when you stop absorbing their storms. They'll call you cold when you stop apologizing for existing. But don't mistake misunderstanding for loss. You're not losing people. You're losing the versions of yourself that kept them comfortable. When you stop rescuing, those who only came for rescue will leave. Let them. You don't owe anyone your depletion. As the light stabilizes, life simplifies. You'll notice that conversations grow quieter, relationships fewer, but everything left feels real. The nervous system begins to trust rest again. The body stops bracing for chaos that never arrives. You start laughing without analyzing, loving without absorbing, existing without performing. That's not detachment. That's coherence. You no longer vibrate to everyone else's frequency. You resonate with your own. But the shadow never disappears. It watches patiently, waiting for the moment you forget. It whispers old beliefs. You're selfish now. You've changed. They need you. Each time it calls, you'll feel the familiar ache, the urge to prove your goodness by self-erasure. That's when you must remember, consciousness doesn't destroy the shadow. It dialogues with it. The moment you speak back, softly, truthfully, the shadow retreats into integration. This is the price and the privilege of awareness. To live awake means you'll never be able to hide in numbness again. You'll feel more, not less. But now the feelings belong to you. Jung said the soul's task is not to find light, but to bear it. And bearing light means carrying it through contrast, through solitude, through misunderstanding, through the slow rebuilding of your inner world. Pause here. Whisper it once in your mind. I choose clarity. That sentence is your compass. It will guide you every time the world tries to pull you back into confusion. Because clarity isn't comfort. It's truth without anesthesia. And truth, once lived, becomes peace. Keep the flame steady. Night always returns before renewal. The empath's path is no different. There will be evenings when the world feels too heavy again, when the glow flickers and old patterns whisper for you to dim yourself once more. Let them whisper. You no longer need to silence the dark, only to understand it. Because what you once feared as shadow is now the soil that anchors your light. Every wound, every exhaustion, every heartbreak was preparing your lantern to hold this clarity. The fire was never outside of you. It was waiting inside the cracks. So tonight, sit with the quiet. Don't rush to make sense of everything you felt. Look around your room, the faint hum of electricity, the soft reflection in the window, the breath that reminds you you're still here. This is what healing sounds like when it finally stops performing. Nothing dramatic, just a steady presence. The glow of someone who no longer needs to prove that they can shine. And maybe that's what Jung meant when he said the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not a savior, not a mirror. Just consciousness wrapped in form. Aware, tender, grounded. You no longer carry light for the world. You carry it through the world. That's the difference. The sovereign empath doesn't project their glow outward. They walk with it like a pulse. If you want, carry one question into tonight. Where does your light end and the world begin? There's no answer to find, only awareness to feel. Thank you for walking this far. The lantern in you was never just for illumination. It was always a reminder that even in darkness, you were the light returning home. Leave the window open.